Hi everyone, welcome back. So this is the, hopefully y'all can share my, or I can share my screen with you guys. We can take a look at these responses to the survey. Thanks for filling that out. So looks like most of you, or I guess kind of an even split perhaps, is underneath of the maybe 50% mark. So a lot of newer players here, some veteran players, so that's great. Take a look at the spreadsheet. I see you guys have been adding your names to that. We're going to also use this to put our questions in if you have them throughout the presentation. So on the third tab, you'll see here's a place to input your questions. And if you see someone who asked a question that you would want to see the answer to, just feel free to put like a little upvote in there and just maybe increase the number if a couple of you vote on the same question. We'll have a chance to answer that at the end. And there's two columns here for like a mentor answer and community answer, so we can kind of compare and see if we have different opinions on the same question. So I thought that'd be a good tool for us. If we can move back to the PowerPoint here in a minute. So we covered the first couple of slides here. I'll just move into the next one. So like why 1v1s? This is something of course, like we all recognize Bar is mostly played as like an 8v8 format, and there are other game modes that exist, 2v2s, 3v3s, 4v4s. One of the I think the big tools that 1v1s provide you for is like a lens to view your own weaknesses, and that can be done through like talking with your opponents or watching your own replays. So it might not be for everyone, and that's perfectly okay. But I think maybe the best part about 1v1s is like how challenging it is on a personal level. I'd also like to make another note here that there is no matchmaking in Bar. We can't just click a single button and jump into a match against, a kind of a random anonymous opponent. So you're really forced to use the lobby system that we have and interact with other players. So if you see a 1v1 lobby, more often than not, there'll probably be a couple observers in there. So if you're not playing the game, you have a chance to talk and communicate with other Bar players, and I think it's a really great way to meet people and to really learn the game. So I've made a lot of friends in Bar since playing it, and I want to say a lot of that was due to the fact there is no matchmaking and we have to go through these lobbies. So what's the goal today? Really, I thought it would be giving you all the tools to answer questions yourselves. I don't know if we've picked up on the meme, but it's always like, it depends is the answer to everything. So maybe as we go through this, I can kind of help equip us with how you can answer questions yourself. I'll just read this out loud. This is taken from Andy sent me this. I asked him to kind of share his thoughts on what should be covered in this. So the main theme I thought of was that average players should focus on having balanced energy and build power. Metal is often what should be the limiting factor based on how much ground you can take, but often I see players either under or overbuilding either energy or build power. Making these things in proportion to the metal you're able to claim will mean that you're able to spend efficiently and give you the most units you have entering the mid-game, which was pretty much the premise of this 1v1 clinic, right? It's like giving you all the tools and the setup and the intuition to how to approach the matchup in the very early game and enter the mid game with like map control, or at least some base semblance of economy, units, radar, all that. So hopefully we can get into we can cover more of these. So, and at the bottom here, of course, focus less on rating and more on macro. As you improve your APM, macroing will become easier. This will allow you to develop more technical aspects of the game, like bombing, harassing, two-prong attacks, etc. So, as a new player, as a new 1v1 player, I would really encourage you to focus on the macro side of things, protecting your expanding engineers, and you'll get better at that over time, and you'll be able to do more complex things better. So the next topic is kind of like map analysis. We'll cover more of this. We're actually going to review a Teddy versus Andy replay, but some of the things you might want to be thinking of as we go through those is like, is it a solar versus a wind map? You know, where should I be expanding with my construction bots or vehicles? Where should I be sending my commander? What unit composition might I be going for at different points in the game? Where should I be building my wind if that's applicable? Where should I be building my LLT placements? And really, I think one of the greatest tools we have in BAR is you can download any player's game. So if you want to download a high-level replay from like a 45, 50 skill player, go ahead and make a note of these things you see them doing. Where are they making their LLTs? Where are they expanding to? Where are they sending their commander? How are they changing their build queue over time? So all these things, hopefully, we can kind of take a look at and expand upon later. Just a real basic quick thing, bots versus vehicles. You might have a preference to either one of these. I would say pick one and kind of stick with it. That might not be completely viable because bots aren't great on every map, neither are vehicles, but you know, there are some strengths and weaknesses to either one, and hopefully we can talk about that. But, you know, bots are, you know, slightly cheaper on metal, more expensive on E. You have access to res bots, which are huge in 1v1s. And they're a little more like mobile, perhaps. And then vehicles, of course, you know, they're a little more expensive, they're tankier, and might be a little less forgiving, or more forgiving as a newer player. Getting into engagements, getting out of engagements. I think with bots, you have to be a little more precise with your unit movements and your early game harass, especially in like a bots versus vehicles matchup. So just pick one of these and practice it. I would say more over the other one. That leads us into ARM versus Core, right? So you have a choice starting the game to pick either one of these two factions. I thought it would be nice to just talk about the strengths and weaknesses as it pertains to 1v1s. So as we'll go with the ARM, of course they have access to the Janus. We've all kind of know that meme, but it's a really strong vehicle that has this great AOE. You know, as we enter the mid game, I think you can kind of move into this unit. It's kind of expensive, so you might want to be sticking with the light tank or incisor if you're playing ARM vehicles. ARM also has access to the Banshee out of the T1 Air Lab, which is maybe a little more technical as a newer 1v1 player, but it's definitely, I think, underused, and I would like to see more of it. It's great for raiding, and we all know that mexes are really vulnerable, same for wind turbines, so ARM also has access to the Tick, unlike Core, so they have this really quick T1 harassing unit out of the bot lab. And the D-gun actually works, that's kind of cute. Sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, but the Core commander's D-gun might misfire a couple times, and kind of unfortunate when that happens. But one thing to note is the ARM bots versus Core bots matchup. Playing as the ARM player versus Core can be a little challenging at times. If you're playing against a better player, Core bots, or the Grunt specifically, outranges pawns and ticks, so you can get kited really hard with in that matchup. So it can take a little bit of adjusting or getting used to in that regard. But moving on, Core has access to a lot of really strong tools in 1v1s. Personally, I think Core is a little better in 1v1s, but hopefully I can be proven wrong as better players start playing the game and you all improve and learn, and you know, we learn this game together. So Core has access to the Exploiter, which is the armed mechs. It's pretty much the same metal cost. It's 2 LLTs and 1 mech, so it's really strong. The farther you get away from your main base, I would say, the more you should be making exploiters. They have access to the Grunt, which is maybe one of the better units in the game. It's been nerfed at least once I know of, and it's just a great reason to open Core bots in a 1v1 matchup. They also have access to the Paralyzer drone, which has a lot of utility in so many different ways. It can prevent run-bys. It can help you engage, static positions that are defended by LLTs. You can leverage them against bots versus vehicles. So as the game moves into the mid game and it can become harder and harder to engage versus a vehicle player, Paralyzer drones can help make up that difference. And then finally, they have the Thug, which in conjunction with Repair Micro and a Commander, it can be really effective against pushing entrenched positions or positions with commanders on them. Just a quick note about analyzing your own replays or downloading replays, right? There's just so many different things you can kind of take a note of. Unit composition, the actual build order, we'll talk more about that. Spotting different areas where you can attack, right? Or your own vulnerabilities and your own positioning, right? Perhaps noting where players are expanding with their commander can be really important on different maps. I think in smaller maps it's more important, your commander positioning. Larger maps it's a little more forgiving. And then like how you're expanding or scaling your economy. It can just kind of make or break the game. You should be able to attack move over players if you scale and economize correctly, especially at lower levels. So this slide I meant to build out this morning. I had a couple technical issues, so didn't really get to this, but I have the replay saved so we can look at that. Here's a couple other build orders, really simple build orders with the replay link. So I'll post this PowerPoint presentation so y'all have access to these links and whatnot. But this is a very simple build order. I think it's just up to about 3 minutes into the game, but you can kind of take a look at this on your own time. Hopefully the notation kind of makes sense to you, but of course it'll be supplemented by the fact you have the replay link here. So this is something I would encourage you to do as a newer player, is to just have a basic way to spend your starting metal efficiently. And that this kind of goes against like developing an intuition or like, hey, it depends, like what my open should look like. It depends on the map, it depends on the context of the situation. But I thought at least having like a really solid build order, or open rather, would be great for newer players. I mean, I use these myself. I have a bunch of these saved on my desktop I use on specific maps. So here's another vehicle open on Highwind. I think the previous map was on Comet Catcher, which is just a solar map. Here's a vehicle open for a wind map, essentially, so slightly differently. And this map in particular, this replay, works on a lot of different maps. I think I've seen Ragna use this essentially the same open on Red Comet, so it works in a lot of different contexts. It's just like making the 2 LLTs quickly and then moving out of the main base with your commander. Something you might note if you watch this replay yourself. Here are a couple quick notes on economy and something I've been developing myself. So first, energy converters. Always reclaim or claim the mexes on your half of the map first before you even think about making energy converters. Something else, like a caveat to that, would be at the end of games in the top right, or even throughout games, you can look at your statistics and see what percentage of your E produced has been accessed. If you notice that, like, hey, at this point in the game, I'm accessing a lot of E right now, okay, build a couple energy converters to balance out those extra E you've been producing, right? But overall, I would say do not make energy converters unless like you're really forced to. And even then, it's like if you're over making E, you can fix that. It's not like energy converters is the fix to over making E. It's just scale your economy in a more efficient way. Number 2, energy storage. Build around 275 E per second, and this allows you to do a lot of different things like teching, but certain features in the game take a lot of E to do. So like your commander cloaks is 100 E per second for standing, 1000 E per second for moving. So having an energy storage built will let you use this more freely in some regards, and you don't have to worry about stalling or not getting a D gun off or not being able to cloak at certain situations, right? So number 3, advanced solars. I found you want to build these around 400 E per second, and this is just like a good base. When the wind is high, I would add that caveat to here. So wind E is strong. You don't want to be trying to make these like when wind's crashing, you already have your E storage up and you're using your bank of E to like get up in advanced solar. But really be making these when wind is high and you have around 400 E per second. And you don't want to make more than 4. I think 4 is a pretty solid number. I mean, we can change this up or we can figure it out, but just in my experience, having an E storage and 4 advanced solars, you can get into a fusion rather efficiently. So, and then last but not least, second factory timings. This once again is like it depends, but around 30 metal per second, 500 E per second, you can start thinking about making a second factory. If you've hit this benchmark and you're starting to pool metal in storage, then really start thinking about putting down a second factory, whether it's like If you open vehicles, maybe go bots. If you've opened bots, maybe go air, which is a great segue into our next topic, or next slide, which would be Air Lab as a second factory. So this is something we see a lot of higher level players do, and it has a lot of utility, I'd say, in so many different arenas. So it gives you access to the T1 transport, which you can get your commander out of jail, essentially, if you're like about to get, surrounded or killed. If you have the transport built, you can avoid so many losses just having this in your back pocket rather. Another little trick is you can move nanos around the map with the T1 transport. So if you want to get a forward factory, you can quickly relocate some build power with that. And transports are cheap. I think they're like 35 metal a piece, so a really cheap unit. Second Air also gives you access to the Paralyzer drone or gunship, playing core or arm respectively. So we've kind of discussed these units a little bit, and maybe we'll see them used in some of these replays we're going to be looking at. You also have access to bombing runs. This is like a little more technical as a newer player, but it's something to kind of like analyze in your own games. Like, how could I have harassed better? How could I have scouted better? Second Air will really give you access to the tools you need to do those more efficiently. And then last but not least, if you're playing against a competent player and they go second Air and you've done it yourself, well, you can immediately start making fighters in response to bombers or paralyzer drones or scouts. So it just gives you the tool you need to defend yourself against an air player or someone who's teched into air. I think this is getting close to the end of the slide. We'll be moving into replays here soon, but I just wanted to show off, like, if you're not on grid, I would really recommend turning that on and try using grid in your settings menu. I hope I don't have to tell you guys, using hotkeys is an efficient way to move actions to your left hand and letting your right hand do more of like the macroing side. So the more you can shift macroing to your left hand, you'll be freeing up your APM in your right hand to do the things it's supposed to be doing. So a couple of commands that are really useful I found is like clear queue G. This can be great for resetting your build queue if you need to like switch to like medium tanks or different compositions you want to mess around with. Like say if you're entering the mid game, I think going like 5 grunts, 1 res bot, 1 anti-air bot is just a great composition. Patrol command is really good for like building, like pooling aircraft or pooling fighters in a specific area. You see a lot of players doing this. And of course, early scouts as a vehicle player, you can just patrol scouts around your main base to defend yourself. You don't have to worry about microing those as much. The repeat command on T, this is great for setting a factory build queue, like 5 tanks, 1 construction bot. You'll be making tanks and scaling your build power simultaneously. You don't have to worry about it. Kind of set it and forget it. And then of course, reclaim is E. You can do this with like your commander, your construction bots, your res bots. It's probably one of the most important things or mechanics in BAR that separates it from other RTSs is like units that are destroyed leave reclaim. So in 1v1s, it can be a little more decisive or important to win and contest these reclaim fields as these battles happen. And I would highly recommend do not res contested reclaim fields. Just focus on reclaiming. So it's just my 2 cents. And this is a replay link that we're going to be reviewing today, just like Teddy versus Andy. And I'll be posting this PowerPoint in the Academy chat so you have access to all these links.
We have a few questions now, too, if you want to read through some of them. We've answered a few, but just if you wanted to talk about them on stream.
Yeah, let's do it. Wow, great job, guys. So I'll go through these. So we have some answers. So for bots versus vehicles, how do you know what to use on the map? Okay, this is something I thought we could talk about. But let's go ahead and read these community answers. Hilly maps for Windows very low. You make value energy reclaim bots. Okay, so this is a decent answer. Bots are good on hilly maps. Vehicles have trouble traversing. Also reclaim heavy maps. Res bots are sick. Yeah. So bots are strong on like terrain that doesn't favor vehicles. I would also say there's some terrain that favors vehicles over bots, like very flat open maps like Comet Catcher. Maps that don't have access to wind, bots are way more E intensive than vehicles. So for sure on solar maps, vehicles are much more common. We can talk about this later. How do you use Banshees to air raid? Run around and shoot the mexes? Okay, great answer. Snipe mexes, invest in air lab. So like, this is like pretty technical, like how to use Banshees to raid. And you're also vulnerable to your own opponent's airplay. So Banshees are definitely on the clock when you get them out versus a competent player who will tech into air to defend themselves. But well, I mean, with surprise attacks, I think these Banshees are pretty strong. Also, I would say like having them on a control group, you can use them just like paralyzer drones to stop run bys. That might not be as effective in the like mid game once you start getting medium tanks. Banshees don't do a lot of damage, but 10-15 Banshees can shut down raids or run bys really hard. Check resources, check minimap, check commander, or you simply just reading this third question here. This is a great question, actually, and I would do this in your find a way to do this yourself. I actually picked this up from day 9 in some regards. The same question, we talk about like a mini map awareness. So anytime, like say, I'll just speak to that, checking the mini map, right? Say anytime you go and fiddle around with like your factory, right? Or anytime you touch your commander, look at the mini map, and like eventually you'll just have this sense of looking at the mini map the whole time. It's really weird how that works, but I would definitely. This is a great question, and I think you have to answer it yourself personally. But as long as you can have like a systematic way of making sure you're not floating E, you're looking at your mini map, you're aware of like where your commander is. Like this is a great one to think about. What is the biggest difference between bot and vehicle opens? We have some community answer. Vehicles are way more build power efficient, which means you can spend your metal much faster and create a much stronger army. But this only applies if you have the income to support vehicles. Vehicle does not win any mid-game. Vehicles does win any mid-game engagement. That's not necessarily true, but it's like maybe slightly true. Mentor answer. Vehicle opens are generally more slower and more metal hungry. Bot opens can be more aggressive in general. Okay, so I would recommend against vehicle opens if you can't get a 3 mech start. So if you're forced on 2 mexes early game at an open, you want to think about doing vehicles. That's not 100% true, but it's just it's just better. I think bot labs are better off of a 2 mech start. And personally, I think that defending against scouts or early raids is way easier with vehicles. So it's like pick your poison in a sense. Like play some games as bots, play some games as vehicles, and you'll figure out pretty quickly which one you like over the other, I think. And of course, like excluding any maps that force you down one tech path, like certain maps it's like just kind of obvious to open vehicles or bots. What do we mean by D-gun not working? This is a bug in the game where the core commander sometimes doesn't shoot the D-gun. So it's just a delay or whatnot. I'm not sure why this happens, but hopefully it gets fixed. The ARM commander just will D-gun with like no issues. So hopefully this does get fixed soon and it won't be that big of a deal. But yeah, definitely something I've experienced in my own games. How to reduce the amount of micro macro when trying to build up eco while defending or keeping map control. This is a great answer here. I think this is celery, whole celery. So shout out if you wrote this down here. I would say play zoomed out. How to reduce the amount of micro when trying to build up eco. I would say the farther you can play zoomed out, the easier this will be for sure. Microing, moving around, and like controlling raids, defending raids, moving your commander around, sending out build queues. Also, like using grid, I think using hotkeys will really clean up your splitting micro and macroing. Because like the less time we spend like adding on wind turbines, is going to be more time you can spend like defending raids or looking at your minimap. Are Whistlers good, why are Whistlers bad in 1v1 but good in AV8? I would say this is more of like it depends. Whistlers have a place in 1v1s, but they're definitely not like from what I've seen, definitely not like a staple unit composition. You might you weave whistlers into your build queue as you move into the mid game to defend yourself against like air units and paralyzer drones. For Air Lab, how do I know when to go second? How to go air over second ground lab? Usually you go from vehicle into bot to gun control. That's a good question. A decent answer too. I personally like going bots into second air, but you can very well go like I guess like maybe like zooming out. The great thing about bar is there's no right answer in a lot of these contexts, or the game it just isn't solved. So I think if you're on a bigger, wider open map, I would argue air is better because you can scout more efficiently. You can move these paralyzer drones around the map very quickly in conjunction with your raiding groups, and you also can bomb people. You can move your commander with a transport to reclaim field. So say if you get into a T1 battle and you want to contest this reclaim field, well, you can just pick your commander up and move them right into that location and have like the D-gun, have the build power ready to go. So this is a great question, and I think it just depends on the map and the context of the situation. I think... Okay, so I'll answer these two later, but this one I can answer right now. What's a good ratio of construction and units to build and repeat? So for vehicles, I would try like 5 medium tanks, or like 5 tanks, like 3 tanks, 2 Janus, 1 con, right? Something like that. For bots, I've seen anywhere from like 4 to 6, so like 4 grunts, 1 con, 5 grunts, 1 con. You might want to change this as you enter the mid game. I've seen like Teddy go like 5 grunts, 1 res bot, 1 anti-air bot. I've seen him do 8 grunts, 3 res bots on repeat. So just something to kind of figure out, and this will change depending on the time and place of the map. But I think 5 to 1 is a good ratio for either bots or vehicles. Okay, so I think we can move into some of the other things I had planned for this. We're just going to take a look at a couple of replays and maybe break out into some 1v1 groups if that suits you. So let me bring up the client. Had some technical issues earlier today trying to get some replays to work after the new engine update.
That ground?
With the air rework, yes, Tier 1 fighters can attack ground targets and attack ground. That's, by the way, an answer to the last row question from the spreadsheet.
How much time do we have? Okay, so we're pretty good on time. I think I wanted to look at just a couple of maps and just go over the map analysis part, and then we'll look at some replay reviews. So let me pull up a map or a couple of maps and we'll look at these together. I think this is a great 1v1 map to look at. There's a lot of different ways we can approach this. Yeah, and once again, while we're loading into this, there is a mentor program available on the bar Discord. Not sure if y'all have used that so much, but it's in the Academy chat. If you can, you can post questions in there and reach out to mentors. You can ping them or tag them and upload a certain replay or any replay you want reviewed, and we'll kind of work with you to kind of address the questions you have in your own games or things you might be doing wrong, or you're not even sure what you're doing wrong. Just feel free to reach out to that Academy chat. There's a lot of mentors. I think there's a couple in here now, like Volshock, Perfy. I'm not sure if you're a mentor or not.
Kind of, sort of. Less active recently.
See X Factor in here. He's a great 1v1 player. Shout out. Mighty Sheep even, yeah. So a lot of higher level guys in here. So one great thing about VAR is I think most of these players are more than happy to help you improve if you ask them questions. So if you're doing something wrong, just reach out and people are more than happy to help you. So this is like this is the map Fallendale. It's a pretty solid 1v1
choose your
map.
starting location.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's just one of my favorite maps. I use this map either for 2v2 with AI or using the scavengers or raptors.
Yeah, it's a great map. I think we can talk about like, hey, what bots versus vehicles on this map. Well, let's look at the terrain. I don't think I can actually do like the F2 where it shows you what's like traversable or not traversable for bots over vehicles, but I don't think there's really any ramps here that vehicles can't get up. It might just be very much slower, right? Like this ramp, a vehicle can go up that, it just might move a little slower than bots. So, but the big thing here on this map is there's just the amount of reclaim. We can see all these rocks everywhere. I think in the corners here, so top right, top left, bottom right, bottom left, there's all this reclaim and the trees spread out across the map. So I would be thinking, hey, bot lab open might be a little stronger here just so we can go res bot first and start picking up all this metal across the map. Where would you expand to, right? Well, like, say there's a couple obvious starting locations, like these for triple mech starts on either one of these hills, right? So say we started here. We can start thinking about how are we going to be expanding with our commander? Are we going to be expanding with construction bots? And you can start thinking about, hey, how am I going to path a construction bot to pick up these mexes? You can do something like here, like cap this mex, make an LLT. Move to here, cap these two mexes, add an LLT, add a radar. Speaking about radar, we can look at different positions. Like, that's a great spot for a radar. If we spawned up here, that's a great spot. This is a great spot for a radar. You know, at any time of these overlooking cliffs, you want to be thinking about using radar as a tool to protect your expanding construction bots. And I would say, like, as you get better at the game, I would rely more on radar and units to protect yourself than static defense. Like, I don't think you're ever going to get away from making LLTs and like really strong locations. Like, they're great units, but you'll be better served using units and radar to defend yourself as you improve. So that's this map. Oh, what are some other things? Like, what do we do with your comm? Actually, I don't have a good answer for that on this map in particular. I kind of struggle in some regards to that. I think I settled on like figure out what they're doing with their comm and then either do a thug push on that position or just go to the opposite hill. So you'll see a lot of this. Someone spawns here and either moves to one of these two hills. So like say they spawn here at this high ground and they move to this hill or this hill, like either you have to find out where they're moving with their comm and either, yeah, like I said, thug push it with your own units and commander, or just try and take this opposite hill so you have access to these triple mechs and you're splitting the map in half essentially. If they go bottom map, you split the map top bottom. If they go top right, you split the map east west. So that's something you want to be thinking about in your 1v1 games, is like, how can I split the map in half and get all the mexes for myself? And I think that's kind of a way you can think about, hey, we've entered the mid game, all the mexes are capped, right? All you have developed economies, you have units on the field, you have radar out, right? So that was kind of the premise of the clinic itself. Can look at another map real quick and then move into some replay analysis. This is a pretty popular 1v1 map. I think it's a little overplayed, but it's great as a beginner to learn the fundamentals on. So I wouldn't shy away from Comet Catcher if you're a newer player. Can talk about like expansion patterns on this map, radar positionings. I have a bigger point in general about this and like map control in regards, so we can talk about that as we get into the game. So For those of you who joined us a little bit later, we have in the Academy chat above this channel, there's a survey and a Google Sheet or Google Sheet that you can you can write your client name, your Discord name, your true skill. You can put your questions in there, and then hopefully we can fill out the breakout group columns. We just have, 2 columns with like, this player versus that. You guys can find each other in the client or on Discord, and maybe play a couple of 1v1s after this presentation. I would like to see that for you guys. I might do the same myself.
Please choose your starting location.
So this is Comet Catcher. I uploaded a replay and a build order for this specific map on the presentation. Y'all should have access to that, but we can spend a minute talking about like where to spawn on this map, where to expand to, where to move your commander, all that. I think you would see like pretty much only 2 spawning locations that most players use. There's like the dual spawns, which is like top left, bottom right. So these 3 mech starts, which lend itself to vehicles. Also, the map has basically no wind, so that further lends you toward vehicle play. You see a few players go bots on this map, and it can be done, but it's like you're like lifting a heavier weight or something like that versus the vehicle player. I'm not sure how quite to say that, but the other 2 viable spawning locations you see a lot of players do is these 2. So these 2 3 mech starts, you'll see a lot of this. I'll just do the build key real fast. Not perfect with that position. You can actually get farther away from these mechs so you have a shorter walk. But you'll see this like 2 mech solar collector, LLT, into 3rd mechs, and then you'll do like solar collector, vehicle plant. So something like this is a pretty standard open on this map. You even see players like will delay this LLT till after their vehicle plant's done, but that's not really exactly what I wanted to talk about here.
Battle paused.
It's more about like, I guess the main point I wanted to make about this is like, how do you expand on this map? It's a really wide open map. There's so many lanes to like attack and run through. So defending yourself can be a real challenge in 1v1s, especially if you're kind of newer to the format. So once again, I would really emphasize like radar positioning will help you deal with that. You also can have radar redundancy in some regards. So like this is a great position for a radar. We can you can kind of see how far that radius goes, and then we can look at like a follow-up position you could put a radar in. So kind of like the radar goes out to that location. Like where would you add like a second radar? Well, like maybe here, over here, over here, right? I've seen players even put them in the very far corners, so like they're harder to raid, or you might not notice them if you were raiding with a run by coming this way, right? So you really want to have some radar, like extra radar coverage on this map. And we can also, I guess the last point I wanted to make would be expansion patterns. You can kind of think of that in two regards, like how am I expanding with my commander, how am I expanding with construction bots or construction vehicles. You see kind of 2 schools of thought. Some players favor leaving their commander in the main base and just using it to assist their factory. Some players like to move their commander straight into the mid to kind of get the control and lock down the middle of the board. It's kind of moving to this position here and just kind of adding on LLTs and mexes in this location and controlling the middle of the board. Hopefully I don't have to explain that. That's pretty important in a lot of strategy games. You can prevent direct attacks to your own main base, but you can also launch attacks to any location on the map rather efficiently. You can also think about how you're expanding with construction bots. You might be tempted to expand this way and kind of grab this amount of real estate or this amount of the map and split the map that way. That can be a little more difficult than expanding this way. So say you focus on getting this more of this oval shape, it's a little more defensible to expand in this regard, and yeah, your opponent can still raid you through these paths. But say if you're putting your army here, you can easily defend and move to any of these locations more quickly to defend yourself or against, or even, I guess, attack from, compared to this style here. Well, if your army's here, well, you have a much farther way to move to defend yourself against any kind of run by. So kind of toy around with this, experiment. You know, there's no right answer there's no right way to play this map. You see a lot of different players expand. You can even do something like this. Kind of expand along this arc with your commander, adding on LLTs and mexes, and then you can easily capture and claim all the mexes behind it. So you're kind of defending yourself by expanding in this kind of diagonal path. I see some players doing this as well, or even, I guess, one more follow-up point. Kind of in the same vein, you're expanding more forward on the map with your construction vehicles, and then everything behind it you can claim a little easier. So you might do like something like this with a construction vehicle, grabbing those mexes and adding on LLTs and radars, and then everything behind it you can grab. Same for doing something like this, so just kind of mess around with it. But I'd really encourage you to download replays and see how better players are doing it. This is something I do myself all the time. Hey, I'm curious like what's another take on expanding, on moving my commander, on the build orders. So there's a lot of resources or a lot of tools you have at your disposal to learn the game from. Not sure if we have any more questions, but I was going to just move into I'm not sure how many replays you guys want to look at. There's at least one I wanted to do, and there's a couple build order replays I have saved here to look at. Not sure kind of what your all's take on this, but feel free to kind of come and go. This is definitely for, let's just do two, and then we'll break out into groups. So this is a Cetus Crack, Goopy versus Free For All Time, or aka Chisato. Both these players are, I think, 50 True Skill plus or OS, so really strong competitors. Sorry, I think with the replay or updated engine, we might not be able to load into this one specifically. Maybe Perfy, you can send me the engine for this specific replay, but I know this Heartbreak Hill one will work for us, so let's do that. Or it should work, rather.
I think that if you check the mentor channel, I have actually sent you the zipped didn't I? Yeah, I did. There, this one.
Okay, thank you. I can get that uploaded, and we can take a look at the replay. So this is a match between Teddy and Andy, and I think the most recent 1v1 tournament. Well, Jazz Cash had his tournament, so sorry, two tournaments ago. Really high level game though, nonetheless, and a great tool to analyze. And of course, this replay is on the server. It's also linked in the PowerPoint presentation, so I'll be sending that to y'all, or Google presentation. Before we get into the replay too hard, maybe we can talk about like viable spawning locations and like radar positionings, expansion patterns. Interesting enough, both of these players chose different spawning locations, so we can take a look at the terrain on the map and ask ourselves, hey, is this a bot lab? Is this a bot map? Is it a vehicle map? The first thing I would look at is like the wind speed. That'll answer that question pretty quickly. 15 wind speed, so yeah, we can make bots. If you can make wind, you can make bots, so that kind of answers that question. But then you look at the terrain on the map and like maybe ask yourselves, do vehicles move around this efficiently? And if the answer is no, you might want to consider making bots. So you can look at these, like all these hills in the center can really slow vehicles down. Not the biggest deal, but the one thing I would really look at is the hills around like your main base. So if we look at this oval I drew, there's only a couple ways vehicles can get in here. It's through this path and this path. So that right there would tell me, hey, I can open bots and instantly be able to defend myself. I can put an LLT here, I can put an LLT here and stop some scout and vehicle run-bys and leverage the speed and mobility of bots to expand into the map more quickly, right? Can talk about good radar positionings. I think Teddy spawned here. We should see him make a radar somewhere on this hill, which gives him access to a lot of this. Can do some radar redundancy. I think if, say if you expanded with a construction bot to here, cap these two mexes, put a radar here, put an LLT here, and now you can expand either to these mexes for free, or not for free, but a little more defensively. You have the radar to cover yourself from run-bys coming in this direction, and so you can like cap these two mexes, put an LLT, put a radar, put some exploiters up if you're core. Can also look down here. You can expand this way, cap these two mexes, or these three mexes rather. Put maybe like 2 LLTs to defend yourself from run-bys. You can put a radar here. You can put a radar here, like edge build these on the cliff, right? So there's a lot of great radar positionings on this map, a lot of great LLT positioning. So once again, if you're not sure, download a replay of a high-level player, and just if the only thing you're noting is where they're putting radars and LLTs, you're kind of doing yourself a service. So with all that out of the way, we talked about like a little bit of map analysis. Let's just look at these specific opens and watch these two great players. Kind of wanted to focus on Teddy in this. Not that Andy isn't worth reviewing or analyzing his open here, but just for the sake of simplicity, we can look at Teddy's open here and maybe I can note some things to y'all, what I'm seeing him doing. That's really strong. So he's probably going to open like a 3-mex start. That's why he spawned here. You have 3 mexes really close to one another. He made this wind turbine here so he doesn't stall energy getting doing 3 mexes. If you do 3 mexes before wind turbine, you can actually kind of stall on E in certain situations. We see a wind drop below 10 or even 9, so he's going to go ahead and make this solar collector to balance out his eco. You don't want to kind of screw yourself over stalling E, trying to get up your initial factory, so he's just playing it safe. Kind of the double-edged sword of like using wind, and we talked about this as far as like energy and converter, energy storage timings and advanced solar collector timings. So it's something you can kind of work with in some regards, or you just have to work it into your game. So let me pause here real fast. I just wanted to look at the build queue. So he went 2 construction bots into 103 grunts. And you might ask yourself, like, hey, is this not enough grunts? Like, or sorry, is that too few construction bots? And something I believe Teddy does, I've asked him this, is he hotkeys his bot lab and he'll insert construction bots into his build queue as he sees fit, right? So that's something you can do with the Alt command. So say if you're on grid, you select your factory, hit Alt Z to insert a construction bot into your build queue. And that'll build in front of the grunt that's currently building. So it's a great way to make sure you don't stop producing the grunts while kind of having in the back of your mind, like, hey, I have a little bit of an army advantage on this side of the map, or I'm harassing over here, or I have a bit of an advantage. I can kind of queue up or scale my economy, scale my build power as the game progresses. So, and then we see around 60, you want at least 60 energy per second to make your first starting factory, and he immediately goes into a wind turbine. So you can get a wind turbine almost built by the time your factory starts producing a unit. So I would always do that if you're on wind, is just start the wind turbine after your factory finishes. And we see right now he started this, but he's really burning through this energy. You'll see as he's assisting this construction bot out, burning through that energy, and then he goes back into wind turbine production. So he'll be switching between this. You'll see him moving between building wind turbines and assisting the factory, and it's all just notice how full his E-bar is at the moment. So let's look at this first construction bot. Hey, makes a radar first. Look at that positioning. You can see these ticks incoming, right? So it might not be up in time, but this is a really stable open, right? So trying to take a note of when he's making this next construction bot. But he went construction bot into 3 grunts, and this is just off of a 3 mech start. So I think the only way you can get really punished from this is an opponent who goes 2 mechs ticks, right? So if you're doing a 3 mech start as bots, you are vulnerable in some regards to these quick tick rushes, and we can see just how fast they get here, right? So these ticks ran all the way across the map already, and you only have 2 grunts out, and he has to defend himself against 5 ticks. So let's take a look and see how this goes down and what ends up happening. So the radar's up, Teddy knows, and instantly pulls his grunt back. He sees these units. He's gonna move 1 back to defend this construction bot. Ends up losing 1 mech. Not the end of the world, because Andy kind of sacrificed some early game economy to get these ticks out. Loses the radar and 1 mech, and keeps 2 of these ticks. So is he gonna take out another radar? Yeah, so really nice play here. Let me just pause. So we have 2 construction bots out, and we're only making ticks. We're remaking this mechs we lost, and look at our the resources, right? We have 130 metal in the bank. Wins at 12, and we're kind of low on E at the moment. Can be a function of like trying to get these radars up, but I think in this position we might see Teddy move off of assisting this factory, producing grunts, and move back into wind turbine production. You don't see that just yet. Perhaps he's doing a little bit of microing. He's actually going to, yeah, there it is. He's putting up this wind turbine behind the tree. Might be a little bit hard to see there, but trying to fix this E as best he can. Wind's dropping down even lower. We might see him add on a solar collector. Not quite. Actually, he's going to come down here and is he going to reclaim the tree? No, he's just going to expand it with his commander. So kind of thought better of it. He's going to grab these couple of rocks here and move back into assisting the factory. So this map's a little unique. There's a little bit of reclaim next to your main base. He's going to pick that up and be able to use that metal. You see we're running a deficit, right? Minus 14 there for a minute to finish these 2 metal extractors. So one point I wanted to make, we may see Teddy do this, is when you start, like when you've burned through all of your starting metal, and you're assisting your lab with either cons or your commander, you can set them on low priority, and that'll let you get these expanding mechs up much quicker. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Let's look at this game state for a second. We see the radar is up, so Teddy knows these ticks are inbound. He's got four grunts moving across the map. He's got 3 checking here, so he doesn't necessarily know where Andy's starting, so that's why we see him spreading his grunts out to these 2 locations and being fairly aggressive with them at that. So where was I going with that? Oh yeah, this is something I wouldn't focus on too much as like a newer 1v1 player. Is I would much more focus on like getting up radars, expanding, defending your construction bots, right? Because like a newer player is, or sorry, a better player is really gonna put pressure on you and try to abuse that. Or the fact that you can't defend yourself, can't defend your expanding construction bots. So looks like we ended up making a 3rd construction bot. That's going to be expanding along this path. Let's take a look at the, looks like he's going to come down here, pick up these rocks, cap these 3 mexes, and then go 2 LLTs, just like I said, right? We got an LLT here to defend this run-by location. He's got an LLT here to defend these kind of run-bys. So really kind of buttoning up the main base, and then of course with the radar he can see any kind of units coming in to defend this expanding construction bot and soon to be this expanding construction bot. So he sees on the radar these ticks are coming in. He can't defend that with a single grunt, so he's moving his construction bot back. He's bringing grunts to the front, and he wants to defend himself, right? He's even in some ways sacrificing this construction bot as to just block this run by path. So construction bot goes down, and hey, let's watch what happens. Is he gonna queue up a res bot? Something that I think one of the greatest advantages of opening bots in some regards is you have access to the res bot. We don't see him making one just yet. I think he's trying to fix his expansion in some regard. He's been slowed down expanding with this tick harassment here. You see a little bit of a scuffle on the other side of the map. Don't want to focus on that too hard. But so we had to adjust his initial plan, right? He wanted to cap these mexes with a construction bot. He's doing it with his commander instead. He's anticipating some further run-bys, so he's putting an LLT next to this radar. He wants to defend all these run-by locations, right? He needs to get the radar up, so yeah, that's going to go down. He's going to defend it with an LLT. We ended up getting the resbot out. You can see just how useful this is. Unfortunately, wind is kind of low. It's picking back up now, and resing does take about, what is that, 26, 27 E per second to get this back online. He did an area mix, but I would like to see him cap this metal extractor and then move back and res this construction bot that went down before trying to res any other units. And once again, like, look at this grunt positioning here. This is all a function of how he had this radar up. He's able to get units in the correct spot to defend this expanding construction bot, deny this run-by path here. So I think the real tricky part of playing 1v1s is just expanding, like not losing your construction bots. It's like, if you can get the expanding part down, and kind of back to the quote earlier, scaling your E and build power efficiently in conjunction with the limiting resource that is metal, you're gonna be a really strong player, or at least getting to be a strong player in some regards. So we see more scuffles and harassment on the other side of the map. You don't want to play super defensively because your opponent will just play really greedy. So we see Tedious fight moving across the map. See more tick run-bys here, getting mexes. I think there was some really cheeky dragon teeth blocking he was trying to get done there. Ended up saving this metal extractor. This construction bot did get rezzed, and hey, let's look at these positionings here. LLT to defend these two mexes. He's going to walk up on the hill. I see a radar and an LLT. And he's going to continue capping these mexes and adding on LLTs in these really defensible locations to defend run-by. So it's like, you can use the LLTs to defend yourself. They're great, but I would really focus on units, good positioning, and radar. See even more radars going up here. Not sure how long I wanted to go into this replay. I think, like, as the premise of the clinic was a ticket to the mid game, right? So I just wanted to give you guys like the tools to expand correctly, defend yourself, and have an economy to be able to actually think. The actual part of the strategy game part is like making decisions and making decisions about how to win the game, and not just how to expand and like protect yourself. One thing to note is like, okay, we have a construction turret going up here and scaling E, right? So just something you want to do in conjunction with yourself. Like, hey, we have 600 metal in the bank, so I'm sure he's like, oh, I need more build power in the main base. I need more E to support more build power as I'm increasing my metal income. And not the cleanest game I've ever seen, but that's a function of like, hey, my opponent is really trying to abuse these run-bys and find damage where he can. And I think Teddy's done not the perfect job, but a really good job of defending himself. He got the res bot back up. He was able to get this double construction gang going here. Still has 73 grunts on the queue. Looks like he inserted 2 more construction bots, and then he's going to be moving back into grunt production here. Still scaling E. More LLT positioning, right? Capping mexes, adding radars. I wouldn't be surprised to see him add a mex right here, or add an LLT, or excuse me, a radar at the top of this hill. See some vehicle run-bys happening, but I think that's about it for this replay. I don't want to go too far into it. I mean, you're free to watch this on your own accord, but really, it's if I can emphasize, I'll just keep reiterating it. It's radars, expansion patterns, and protecting those construction bots. It's just like a huge part of the early game in 1v1s. Give me a second, I'll update the engine here so we can load into this replay. Yeah, go ahead. So I think this is the last replay I was gonna review. Let me bring up the spreadsheet real fast while this is loading in.
By the way, there's a question whether you could try to avoid zooming in and out a little bit more, because there are some pretty bad issues with Discord video artifacting. So it's kind of hard to kind of talk to.
Yeah, I can try and improve on that. Sorry about that, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you can, or if you're interested in doing a kind of practice session, interested in doing like a breakout practice session after the presentation, go ahead and move to this Practice Partners tab. This is in the Academy chat. It should be pinned in Academy, this spreadsheet. Yeah, so we have a couple. I see Perfy Celery. I might jump in your guys' game and watch that one, but feel free to move into this, guys. It's a great format, and it's a good way to connect with other members of the community if you're kind of looking to get involved in 1v1s or learn the format more. That being said, we can look in or move into this replay. I'll try better to not zoom in and out. I think my FPS is like crashing right now. I think my computer's about to explode or something. Hopefully that picks back up. There it goes. I'll try not to zoom in and out for you guys. So this is a match played pretty recently between Chisato and Goopy. They're both really high on the leaderboards, and this is a 2 solar collector into Bot Lab open. So maybe we'll pause this and do a little bit of a map analysis like we did on the previous map. Sorry, guys. So let's look at some things. Wind speed, right? Wind speed's at +20, so check mark. We can open bots, completely viable. And then we look at the terrain, right? Is it favorable to vehicles? Is it favorable to bots? I see a couple of hills that bots can navigate around that vehicles can't. There's even some plateaus that neither can get to. Actually, these hills here, only bots, well, I guess a amphibious construction vehicle can get on top of this to cap the mexes, but these 2 hills, bots can easily traverse up and down, so kind of split. I think you can go either way, but we end up seeing, if I remember correctly, both these players go like it's like vehicles versus bots, so there's no wrong answer in that regard. And that being out of the way, hey, we can talk about like radar positioning. You know, it's like if you're going bots, well, that's a great radar positioning. This is a great radar positioning, right? You can really cover a lot of your half of the map, air quotes, which is another thing. Like, hey, what is my half of the map? Well, maybe think about what your opponent is doing. So you might initially think, oh, I'll split it diagonally, that's half of the map, right? But what if your opponent expands this way with this commander, right? He gets all of this. Well, now suddenly it's split map, top versus bottom, right? And then of course the opposite is true. It could be east versus west if they go this way. So just kind of something to think about. And you know, all that out of the way, take a look at this open and see a really, I think this is a really strong open, and it pretty similar to what Teddy was doing. So let's notice the similarities. So we couldn't open wind just because of the nature of, couldn't open wind turbines because wind speed was so low. We see it picking up now, but that's after we've made 2 solar collectors and our factory is pretty much finished. So we see as soon as his factory is done, Chisato moves into making additional wind turbines. He goes construction bot first, which is pretty huge. I would really recommend off of a 2-mech start, just always off of a 2-mech start, I would really recommend opening construction bot first, or construction vehicle first. We see we have a full energy bar with some metal in the bank, so we're going to be assisting our factory to get this construction bot out. And we're not adding on additional wind just yet. We're burning through this E, burning through this metal. And we'll see as soon as this gets low, is he going to start? Yeah, it goes into a solar collector because wind is still low. So he doesn't want to add on wind turbines with wind below 8. So he's going to be moving into this solar collector. And it looks like he's expanding with these 2 construction bots, right? One goes into the back of the main base, caps these mexes. Another one was capping these mexes. Notice there's an LLT right here. So he goes mex, 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 LLT, and then he should be expanding in this direction. And then we're moving into grunt production, right? 13 grunts, no more cons, right? So he wants to get these early cons out onto the map and protect them with grunts, just as we saw with Teddy's Open, right? We're kind of stalling on metal at the moment, so you might want to consider setting your commander to low priority. That's going to let you get these mexes up more quickly and then kind of fix this metal issues that's happening, so we can, expand efficiently while producing grunts. I guess the good thing about opening bots or playing bots is they do not take a lot of metal to produce in mass. It's much more energy intensive, right? 36 metal apiece to 880 energy, and we only have 234 in the bank, so that kind of gives you an idea of the difference we can compare it to the bots. Vehicles. Yeah, Goopy actually opened ARM bots. I thought he opened ARM vehicles on this map. So notice the positioning on the grunts. Kind of spreading them out, denying this lane here, this attack path. We have one over here with this construction bot. We have another one over here with this construction bot. And now that those are defended, and some like air quotes defended, with a single unit, he's able to spread these units out onto the map and find out where his opponent's at. Maybe get some kind of counter damage. Wind is still pretty low on this map. Or on this particular iteration. That's a little unfortunate. I didn't quite catch this, but this construction bot moved back. Maybe he saw an attack coming. I didn't quite notice that, but yeah, much more the same from the last game. I guess the only thing we're truly lacking is just a radar. This is a great spot for a radar here. Wind is still super low, so that's forcing Chisato to make yet another solar collector. And he finally puts on, look at this, 1 construction bot, 5 grunts on repeat out of the factory. So you can scale your build power with your units. See on the mini map here, we have a couple of grunts moving on the top mid. We see another grunt moving on the far right of the map. The mini map is a great way to actually move units around, so you don't necessarily have to spend time zooming out, zooming back in. You can just box select your units, click, click, click on the mini map to get them to go where you want. See more of this expansion from our construction bot here on the bottom. He's just capping the mechs, adding an LLT, capping the mechs, LLT radar, and then into exploiter production here. As the farther we get away from our main base, I think the better it is to make these exploiters. More of the same here in the back. These 3 mexes are defended by this guard tower, and then he's just using this construction bot to scale his E. He's going to be adding on wind turbines. I'm sure he'll be making more wind turbines over here. See, a 3rd construction bot is expanding. So a lot of the same patterns here. It's just like expand with your construction bots, defend them with units and radar, and this is gonna give you and like scale your E. It's like a lot of moving pieces in some ways, but it's like the more you can get down, expanding your metal, scaling E, defending your construction bots, like you'll be in such a better position over your opponent. And we can pause here. I would encourage you to get to the 5-minute mark in your replays and compare your position to your opponent. Look at the statistics, right? look at the statistics. You can take a look at metal produced, energy produced, and maybe in some ways more importantly, energy excess. Look at this. What is that? Almost 50, like 40%, something like that. Excess energy. That's not a cue to, hey, I need to make energy converters. That's more of like, I need to slow down on making energy and focus more on scaling my, like adding on construction bots or more units. That out of the way, I guess we can move into the last part on like the Q&A. I can like open the floor up to you guys. If you want to ask questions in voice comms, I can bring up the spreadsheet and take a look at that.
Is it okay? I can ask a question like here in VC, or do I have to use the spreadsheet?
Either one's fine.
Okay, because I also want to ask, 'cause I also like to try using amphibious or naval, but I've noticed that both these types of units tend to be a little too costly. Is there any way is there any like tips on how that like circumvent the economy issue with that one?
So your question is like using amphibious units on land maps and how to like, are those useful given the fact they're slightly more expensive, or?
Or it's just making it like it's on a water map.
I see.
Advice on that one.
That's kind of tough to answer. On water maps, you are forced into that tech path. Personally, we don't see so many games on those maps. I really like playing on water maps like Paradise Lost. I could direct you to a video I've done on that gives you like a build order for like a naval units. So I just looked at, I do this all the time. I downloaded some games that Ragna played. I watched the replays. I used a notepad to make a build order. I can even show that on screen.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is Ragna's build order on Paradise Lost, right? And it just pretty cut and dry, but it shows you like what he's producing out of his shipyard at different times. So like 2 construction ships, 5 supporters, and then he moves into 2 subs, 3 more construction ships, 10 supporters, and then he goes 3 assault frigates, 1 sub, 1 con on repeat after these initial ones are done being built, right? So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's definitely more of a balancing act. It's an adjustment like doing amphibious, hover, or ships compared to you're so used to playing like vehicle or bot opens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. So, yeah, it's still rather cost effective. So I understand. So when you mean by supporters, that's like destroyers or the cruisers, right?
Supporters are the core, like light assault ship. Like they don't quite have the Dolphin like ARM does, but this is like the lightest, cheapest ship Core has access to, the supporter.
Oh, got it.
So that maybe gives you an idea. It's like in the early game, you can kind of compare this to like opening vehicles. You'll see players go construction vehicles into scouts, right? So they're using that starting metal on these cheap, quick mobile units. The scouts, before they start producing tanks, even they give themselves a chance to like maybe expand to a few extra mexes before they start moving into that tank production. So you can see the same thing here. And I'm not sure who this is talking, but I can maybe link you the video that goes along with this build order.
Oh, okay. It's me. Call me Pizzalicious. So yeah, it's just the guy with an looks like Orange Knight from Castle Crashers.
Cool, man. I'll actually put that on the spreadsheet. I'll just put the link to that on the spreadsheet real fast.
Okay, thank you.
Let's take a look at any other questions that were asked. We have a question here. I'm an airman, so what tips do you recommend for getting a proper eco, since air engineers are rather expensive as my first factory? Opening air in 1v1s is kind of a cheese, and you'll die every time once people figure it out. Goopy does it sometimes. And yeah, so this is a good question in the context of like 8v8s or larger team games. You'll see dedicated air players, and maybe not so much in 2v2s, but like 3v3s, 4v4s and up, you'll definitely see dedicated air players. One thing I'd comment to this is I've seen in like 4v4s, Stardom will open a bot lab, get out like a res bot and a couple of cons and a construction turret, reclaim the bot lab, and then make his air factory. So he's able to expand with these cheaper cons before and not using the air cons to do that work. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. What do you do with all those cons that you build on repeat? Okay, so we see one of the answers here, the factory guard, which is a setting you can turn on in the client. So these units that pop out of the factory will just automatically assist it. But really what you can be doing is like, there's a couple things we can, of course, send them out onto the map to expand. We can use them to scale our wind turbines or solar collectors. You can use them to move to the front. If you see a reclaim field forming, you can send them there to start reclaiming. If you see you're about to get harassed or you see a raid incoming and you know you won't be able to defend it and you're going to lose your expansion and your con, just send one of those cons to that position and you can like rebuild it more quickly. So there's a lot of utility, and apart from just scaling the build power assisting your factory. So you can think about scaling your economy, capturing mexes, and contesting reclaim fields with that extra build power. Before the air rework, I would set my factory waypoint. What was that unintentional? Okay, so I think that's a pretty straightforward answer to this question here. When to build nanos? I like this question. You see a community answer around 10-ish metal per second, 15 metal per second for bots, 14 metal per second for vehicles. I'm not sure exactly on these numbers. I would just like to add my own comment about this is I would never leave your factory unassisted. So say if you're planning on moving out of the main base with your commander, have cons to replace that build power. You can also use construction turrets or nanos to for that same function, right? So just something to kind of, you can like nanos aren't always replacing the build power of cons, because cons you can obviously move around the map, but I think this question is very much like it depends. This question, like the answer to this is like kind of very much it depends, but some things you don't want to do is leave an undefended factory. So I think that's my only, unassisted factory. That's the only comment I would have to this when to build nanos. But you definitely want to have some economy. And if you want a more clear-cut answer or some ideas to answer, I would download some replays from high-level players and see when they're adding on nanos, or why they're not adding on nanos in favor of construction bots or vehicles. So just kind of, this is a great question, and I think there's more than one right answer to this. Does it make sense to Does it make sense to put units in a line on the front line to prevent harass? Yeah, absolutely. This is maybe something I didn't touch on too much, but you want to be in between your opponent's army and your economy or mexes. So that's like a really easier way to stop run buys from happening, is to be in between their units and your economy. So it does make sense to do this, especially if there is like an air quotes front line, to put the majority of your army there, and then to kind of splinter off smaller forces to prevent, like, to have in lanes you might anticipate a run by from coming from. Yeah, absolutely. It's like you want to be like using your units. Sorry, this question was updated. You want to be using your units to intercept attacks in some regards. I would use that word. So using your radar, putting your units in between their attack and your base. Hopefully that answers your question. Is there an acceptable energy excess percentage? I'm thinking no excess means that all you're selling too often. Yeah, smaller excess is better. I would think of it in terms of like percentages. So if you're under 10%, that's you're not doing too bad. Maybe under 5 would be ideal. But if you're over 10%, you want to look at your replays and like see where that's happening and where you're overproducing energy. So a great question, and this is something LSR actually pointed out to me, how important reducing your energy excess is, and that's a really easy way to clean up your game and improve. So great question. Last one I see, are there any key bindings to help with con micromanagement? Since I had a bad habit of leaving around 20-30 cons idle, I tend to leave them in base, not assisting factories order. So there's an easy answer to this. That you can set your, I think there's a setting to units will guard the factory. So these cons that you produce just will automatically assist your factory. There should also be a hotkey to select on grid to select idle cons, and there's even a little icon in the bottom mid of the screen to select those. So I would maybe get more used to using the hotkey. If you see that icon there, just grab them. It can be a little difficult to know where they are on the map, so I think, yeah, there is a key binding to help you with this, but I would maybe focus more on, okay, control tab, thanks for that. I would focus more on fixing this over doing anything else. So this is a great question and a great weakness in your play, and it's good that you know that this is happening to you. I would focus much more on fixing this than like anything else. So not harassing, nothing like that. Just making sure your build power is being used efficiently. And I guess that's back to, I don't see any more questions, so I'll just go back to the PowerPoint and look at that quote from Andy. Roasted. My name's Kurt Guy. Yeah, doxed myself. So let's just go back to this quote. I don't think I even recorded this at the start of the replay or cast. Sorry, is that another question? I'll take that
I
as
think that's a very unmuted Birdman.
Okay, thanks, Birdman. So let's just go through this quote again. Focus on balancing your energy and build power. Metal is the limiting resource in the game, right? So if you can proportionally coordinate and scale E, metal, and build power, you're gonna be like a 30 OS player, no sweat. So and you'll literally be able to attack move over your opponent because you have more units. So if we focus on these three things, you shouldn't have to be able to raid. You can just attack move over your opponent and win to a certain point in the game. So, and once you progress past that point, then yeah, you can focus on like raiding, microing, teching, surprise attacks, flanking, two-prong attacks, all that kind of stuff. But before you get to that point, focus on balancing build energy, build power, and metal, which you gain metal by expanding correctly and defending your expanding construction bots and your expansions, which is way easier said than done. Yeah, that's a huge thing. So do you guys have any more questions before we do the breakout rooms? All right, well, thanks for joining us. This is going to be recorded and posted somewhere. I'll let you guys know where that ends up being up at, but let's look at this practice partners tab. So I see a couple of players. I want to check out this whole Celery and Perfy match. Hopefully you guys get in there. Noodle Cup, I see you're up here. If anyone wants to put their name down to make sure Noodle Cup has someone to play against. If not, I'll just be in there with you, my bud. But yeah, hopefully we can get a couple of matches in here. And cool, Lizard. Thanks for doing that, man. Yeah, so thanks to everyone for attending, and I think I might end the recording and leave the Academy chat, or just jump in with Perfy and Celery wherever you guys are at and just observe that game. Or if anyone wants to play against me, maybe I saw X Factor in here. Taku, welcome, man. Maybe me and you can play a game against each other. Tagada, see you in there. And yeah, welcome guys to 1v1s, and hopefully you can find some players to play against and improve your games. It'll really help you in other formats, especially 8v8s and 4v4s, something to that effect. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you.